We've helped step couples work through all kinds of challenges during the holiday seasons over the years, haven't we? Yeah. Blending families means that you're blending your different family traditions. And that's something that pops up a lot during the holiday season. And it's really not just about the traditions. We also enter this discussion around, well, how are we going to spend our money? And clearly there's potential for conflict there, right? So in this episode, we're going to give you 4 mindset shifts that could help you get on the same page when it comes to your holiday budget.
Yep.
We'll see you on the other side of the intro. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork,
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Hey, welcome to episode 12. We are so glad that you are joining us.
Welcome, welcome.
Don't forget to hit subscribe in iTunes, and would you consider leaving us an honest review? We would love to know how we can get better at serving you on this podcast. So, recently, Kim and I went and attended something called the Summit on Step Families. It was way over on the other side of the country for us, and it was such a great experience. And in fact, the evening before the official summit started, there was an intensive breakout session that was focused all on blended family finances. Like, blended families have a lot of different things to consider when it comes to blending our finances and managing our budgets and figuring all that stuff out. And we learned a lot, and we know this can be a big challenge. And at many points along the way, I'm sure, we're going to be talking about finances in blended families as this podcast unfolds.
In future episodes.
But today, we just want to kind of narrow in on one area, and that's talking about money as it relates to just our current holiday season. This is a time where the pocketbooks can open up, the credit cards can come out, and lots of different things can happen because I've got some things I want to do with, my kids, and you've got things you want to do with your kids, and we don't always want to give in on what we want. And so there's a potential for conflict. And so we want to just nail that down today.
Yeah, and before we jump into these 4 mindsets that we're going to talk about today, I just want to bring up the fact that a lot of times we try to avoid having conversations about money. I mean, Mike and we spent years avoiding conversations around money.
Yes.
Because it does bring up conflict, and everyone has a different idea of how money should be spent and what's the priority, what's most important. So we're here to encourage you and push you a little bit into having these conversations. Don't avoid it. Have these conversations as early as possible. And as you're listening to this, it's already December. So now is the time.
Yep.
And what we'd like you to do is really approach this from a perspective of building a plan together for the benefit of the entire family. You're working as a team, because the last thing we want is for the holidays to cause conflict, right?
True.
We already have enough to deal with just in our blended family journey. So we don't want to break the bank around the holidays.
Yep.
We also don't want to dump a bunch of unnecessary debt on our credit cards.
That's right.
Because then after the new year, we're probably going to end up with some regrets. We're going to be struggling financially. And there's more potential for conflict right there, because we're going to end up in a place where we didn't want to be because we avoided conversations around how are we going to handle money around the holidays and how are we going to budget for that. So we're encouraging you to sit down right after you listen to this, or as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Sit down and talk about this as a team.
Yeah, communication's key. And, if you're avoiding or if you're afraid to have this conversation right now, like Kim said, we avoided it for years. It wasn't just the holidays for us.
And what did we learn?
We learned that we both have very different priorities around money.
And we also learned that avoidance doesn't solve problems.
That's absolutely right. If you're afraid, though, to sit down and have this conversation, one way to think about this could be, well, we're just talking about the holiday budget right now. We're not talking about every bit of our finances. So this might be a small step to learning how to communicate really well together. Now, the other thing you can consider is who you are as a couple when it comes to spending and saving. Yeah. A lot of times couples will find that one is a saver and one is a spender. And that's not always the case, but it's common. And that creates a lot of potential for conflict. Sure. One person wants to be more conservative. One person wants to be more liberal as far as just their spending goes for the holidays. And all of a sudden we're in this battle.
Yeah, we've coached couples like that have had a really tough time coming together.
We have, well, actually, that's not us.
Yeah, no, we fall into the next category.
The next category could be the spender and spender, right? This is the couple who, we're really good at this, finds it much easier to talk each other into things rather than out of things.
Yeah,
right?
We're good at rationalizing purchases to each other.
That's right.
And accepting it from each other.
But then later there's some regret and then there's some conflict when we're dealing with the overspending fallout.
Sure.
And one of the things that can solve that, in fact, one of the things that continues to solve this issue for us is a really good budget and plan.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Now, the third type, so you've got the one couple that's the saver and a spender, and they've got potential for conflict. You've got the spender and spender who ends up in conflict because and regret because they're overspending a lot of the time. Then you have the saver and the saver, and in some ways we're like, man, I hope you have a great holiday because it's pretty easy for both of you not to spend.
You probably already have a budget and are sticking to it and doing well if you're both savers.
That could be, although sometimes savers are saving for different reasons with different motivations, and it can still lead to some conflict.
Still conflict. So
think about that. We're talking about communication. Let's make sure we have that conversation as soon as possible. And as you're doing that, think about what type of couple are you? Are you a saver-spender, a spender-spender, or a saver-saver? And have that be a part of your conversation as well.
Yeah. And some of you also are budgeters, and you may be already purchasing gifts throughout the year. And we envy you if you're really great at putting a little bit of money aside every month, and then you see the bargain and you buy it. That's great. I think we have two things.
I need to get better at that.
We have two things that you don't even know about yet, honey, that I've...
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Kim's good at this, but I'm not so great at it.
Yeah. Well, I love to take advantage of a bargain, so it's easy for me. But many of us... get all the way to the first week of December,
which is where we are right now.
We're at now, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, Christmas is coming. And then we react before we actually have a plan.
That's right.
Or a budget or a conversation around what we're going to be spending. So if that's where you're at,
it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. You've just got to accept where you are. Right? We talked about acceptance last week. We're going to accept that. Yep. We've put it off. It's all right. And now we're going to start working a plan together now. Like I said, as soon as this podcast is over, we want to encourage you to do that. Now, a budget is really important. And what a budget does, I mean, I know no one likes that word. I don't like that word either. But what we found just in general is when we didn't have a budget, we were constantly fighting with each other over how money would be spent.
Yeah, sometimes it was a heated argument, other times it was a cold war, and other times it was just a plain old disagreement.
Yeah, or one of us would spend money and hide it from the other one. We had some of that going on for a while. Yeah, in fact, in one season, I was not allowed to have a credit card or a checkbook because of that, as I recall.
I do recall that. The problem there is that we're constantly arm wrestling on opposite sides of the table.
Yeah, we're kind of against each other. And that doesn't work well in any relationship. So what a budget does is it really moves you both to the same side of the table. So instead of fighting against each other of how money is going to be spent, you have this budget that already tells you how money is going to be spent. You've agreed upon the budget already, so there's no room for discussion or conflict. You've agreed on it. The budget calls the shots instead of you having to negotiate between each other back and forth about what you want to spend money on.
And it does take some work to agree on the budget.
Yes, it does.
You have to get that done up front. And that's what we're challenging you to do right now before you do a lot of your holiday shopping.
Yeah. And once you get a budget in place, it's really freeing.
It's much more simple.
It absolutely is. Simplifies everything.
So here's the thing. We're not here to walk you through a specific budgeting process today. We're not going to dive into how do we create a budget and how much are we allocating and where's it all going to go? We're not jumping into that today. What we want to focus on now that you're going to have that conversation, you're going to communicate about it. Now that you know which kind of couple you are, whether you're savers or spenders, and now that you understand the importance of budgeting, I know we've hit all that very, very quickly. Now that we've got all that, when we sit down to do all this, let's talk about 4 mindsets that are really going to help that communication and the budgeting plan to be successful.
Keep you on track.
All right. So let's dive into that. The first mindset that we need to be thinking about as we're doing our holiday budget is that fair isn't always equal. So we're shifting our mindset from equal to what we call equity. Now that's a very subtle shift, but there is a difference. Equity is really more about each child experiencing your thoughtfulness and your support in the best way that they can accept it. It's about you expressing love and affirmation to each individual child in a way that they really grab a hold of it. You know, sometimes we get stuck in this feeling that there's just no way around overspending because we have to be sure to spend the exact same amount and get the same number of gifts on every individual child, right? That's getting really high centered on everything being exactly equal. But the reality is different kids want different things.
Sure.
And often they're not even comparing price tags.
Yeah.
Now, if you have, 2 teenagers that, one's hers and one's his, and they're close in age and all that. Yes, there's some things we need to pay attention to, but that is still through the lens of an equity mindset to ensure that they're receiving the right messages from us, not that they're getting the same price tag. And so again, there's a bit of a subtle difference there, but there is a difference. And a lot of younger kids, like there's between Annika and our mutual kids, there's a 7-year difference. There was a really long season where our younger kids, they just wanted cool stuff. They had no idea what things cost. And so Annika, as an older child, would get much more expensive stuff, where the younger kids would get something less expensive, but they all felt loved and they all had affirmation from us, and they had a lot of fun. So, if you want to get something that's a little bit more expensive for one child, it's okay too to let them know, hey, you may not have as many things to unwrap. Like we get this worry that, gosh, this child only has 2 things to unwrap and that child has 5 things to unwrap. Maybe that's okay. Yeah. If you are honest and you're open and, hey, yeah, I know you want that new iPad for Christmas and I'd be happy to get that. What that means is you may not get anything else.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that? And if they're okay with that, awesome. Move forward. So equity, it's really different than making everything equal. And we've got to keep that in mind, that fair, what our kids call fair, isn't always equal. But we're shifting our mindset really when it comes to those budgeting decisions around how we can make everybody feel equity within the family. Yeah.
And a lot of blended families worry about showing favoritism. Yeah. That can be a real issue in step families, this favoritism thing. And if you're concerned about that, we're going to go ahead and link a blog to the show notes that we wrote a while back on favoritism to kind of help you unravel that and have a discussion around that. Yeah, that'd be really good. And that is important. We don't want kids to feel like there's favoritism going on. We also don't want, life isn't fair. Yeah, we don't need to get high centered on everything being equal. Right. Either. We need to, and we can look at each child as an individual. What does this child need that's different than what that child needs? Totally. And not worry so much about matching penny per penny. That's right. So shifting that mindset from equal to equity. Yeah. All right. That's mindset number 1.
what is mindset number 2? We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Well, mindset number 2 has to do with a lot of our own fears around kids being disappointed. And I know I've struggled with this over the years too. And sometimes I would make assumptions about what my kids were going to be disappointed about. And then later I would find out, well, they didn't even give a rip about that. So don't just assume that, we've always had this big expensive ski trip over the holidays and my kids are expecting that, so we have to put that into the budget. Mm-hmm. Don't just assume that they're expecting everything to be the same.
Right.
And that they're going to be upset or disappointed if those things don't happen. They might be, but don't just assume that.
Mm-hmm. So we're not fearing disappointment in our kids.
Yeah. And sometimes we get this high-centered mindset of, this is the way we've always done it, so this is what we have to do.
Yep.
And part of the blending process is that we're figuring out how things are going to be different now.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe, some traditions are going to need to shift and change.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe your financial situation is very different than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not be able to do what you did before. So don't fear the disappointment of the kids. Don't let that drive you to overextend your budget.
That's right.
And like we talked about last episode, kids are going to have disappointments in life, and that's a good opportunity for them to learn acceptance.
Yep.
And you know what? If your kids can name the gifts that they got last year, I would be shocked. I mean, it's
sometimes that's really true. Yeah.
It's one day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our minds, we make it into so much more that our kids are going to, aren't going to love us if we don't go all out for Christmas.
Or they're going to think we don't love them.
Yeah.
And those are just untrue.
Yeah. So some things you want to ask yourselves is, what have you actually committed to? Have you actually promised your kids anything?
If you haven't, maybe you're fine.
Yeah, and you can change things.
Right.
But if you have, is it something I absolutely need to follow through on? Or do I have an opportunity to reset those expectations now and let them know that something different is going to happen? I mean, we had to do that recently ourselves. Last year, we had to reset some expectations with our kids, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more.
Yep.
Now, here's a really challenging question. Is the temptation to overspend on the kids really about their disappointment or yours?
Yeah, that one is tough for me.
And
because
again,
the answer for me on that one most of the time is it's my disappointment.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to our wanting to create that perfect blended family holiday. It all has to be just perfect. And so we need to examine that. Maybe it's more about we need to let some expectations go.
Yeah.
Now, if you need to make a financial adjustment this year, it's okay to let the kids know and help them to get their expectations in line as early as you can.
Yeah.
And like I said, we've had to do that, and our kids handled it fine.
Yeah, that's step 2. So today you listen to this podcast, and then you're going to go have the conversation. You're going to create your budget by the time you go to bed tonight. And then guess what tomorrow's assignment is? Let the kids know.
Yeah.
If there's going to be something different, just let them know, hey, this is going to be a different. And then you can sail through the holiday season and have a great time. So we're remembering that fair isn't always equal, right? So we're shifting our mindset from equal to equity. we're not fearing disappointment. We're hitting that head on. And number 3, you might want to ask yourself, what can we do to create experiences? Okay. So what I mean by that is maybe there's some things we can put our resources into this year that help everyone to have a really fun experience as opposed to just purchasing more stuff.
Yeah.
I love the point you just made, hon, about, man, a lot of kids can't even name the gifts they got last year. But I've got a little bit of a story for you because experiences are different.
Yeah.
You know,
they're very impactful.
Yeah. You know, we've been on a journey where we've been cutting back a little bit when it comes to budgeting, especially around the holidays. And that's forced us to get creative. And last year we said, well, what would it look like to invest more in memories than more stuff? And how can we make that happen? And so we came up with what we called the Awesome Anderson Advent Adventure. And it took us a little while. It took energy. It took time. It took thought to sit down and look at the first 25 days of December and say, okay, what can we do each day that isn't just steeped in gifts and all of that, and enjoy this entire holiday season because the kids already know, we'd already set the expectation that, hey guys, the amount of gifts under the tree this year are going to be a little bit less.
Yeah.
And so we got to work going, well, what are some fun things that are super cheap or free that we can do each day? As a
family.
And some of them, there were a few sprinkled in gifts. Like one day they got some really fun socks, right? That were like $3
that they opened early that were under the tree.
Yep. And I think there was like some little
games.
Remember I don't know if anybody listening remembers the old Oregon Trail game. I played it when I was a kid, but we found this funny little Oregon Trail game that was like just ridiculous that the kids love, and we throw it in there. And so we had some of that, but we also said, well, what can we do to just have some fun together? So we did like, okay, we're going to have holiday movie night, you know, on one of our streaming, either Netflix or Hulu or whatever you guys have. And then we chose who would pick it. And then like the next week we did the same exact thing, another holiday movie night, and we let the other child pick the movie. And it was fun. We made some popcorn and we turned the lights down and we just had a good time and enjoyed that. Another time we went to the grocery store, got some graham crackers and some frosting, and we made houses from scratch rather than getting the kit. And man, I'll tell you what, my house was one ugly house, but we had a really fun time doing that. And then one of our favorites, we were just talking to the kids about this the other day. We said, okay, we're thinking about the Anderson Advent Adventure again.
Talk about the impact of creating a memory.
Yeah. I'm going to. I'm just, this is really, you're absolutely right. This is key.
Here it is a year later. We're circling back.
Hey guys, we're thinking about, the Advent Adventure again. What do you think? And they're like, yeah, like we want to do that. I said, okay. Well, schedules are a little different this year because we have one daughter who's working and she's driving, and she's not here every night like they were last year. It's significantly different. So we just started asking, well, what are the things you'd really want to do?
What were the highlights?
And man, they were rattling them off, and they were really good. One of the favorites, I'm just going to give one more example.
All of these things were very inexpensive.
Absolutely.
I mean, we probably spent half on Christmas than we have in previous years,
I agree
at
with that.
least.
That's right. So this one was one of all of our favorites. We went to Hobby Lobby. We gave each of us a $5 bill in cash. And we did, I think we had about 10 or 11 different topics that we put in a stocking that you had to pull out, kind of like pulling something out of a hat.
I think one was glitter.
Yeah.
That's the one our son got.
One was glittery. One was a music theme. One was sports theme. And the challenge was you had to go into Hobby Lobby, pick an ornament that fit that theme, and including tax, you had to keep it under $5.
Under $5.
And we had a blast looking at so many different things, and it was really fun.
And then we came home and put the new ornaments on the tree, and it was so much fun.
And so that was one the other day when we were asking the kids about it. That was one where they both were like, oh, that was so fun. We need to do that again. Yeah. So the point is, we get really high-centered on giving gifts that often end up getting donated either to, a good organization or in the garbage can. Yep. And like Kim said, a lot of times a year later, kids don't even remember that. But when we create an experience and we're intentional about that, two things happen. One, it's something that we're going to remember for a long, long time. And two, when we do it really creatively, it can be something that doesn't even come close to breaking the bank.
Yeah. And since we're talking to blended families, we want to put the caveat out there that low and slow. If your family is having some tensions around bonding, if tensions are high when everyone's together, start out slow with small things.
That's right.
Yeah, don't overload. And but if it goes well, like watching a movie together is a great bonding experience for blended families, because you don't necessarily have to be interfacing with each other and talking the whole time, but you're still enjoying something together. So take it low and slow, and definitely stick to our bonding principles that we've taught many times in the past. All right. So that was number 3, was create an experience together rather than a bunch of gifts. And the 4th one is to keep in mind that this is not a competition. And this is tough because a lot of times we fall into the trap of competing with the other home.
There you go. It's not a competition between us and the other home.
Yes. And we've struggled with this too. My ex and his wife at the time were spenders, and they spent a lot of money on Christmas. And sometimes that made me feel like I needed to compete and I needed to one up them. But keep in mind that this is not a competition.
That's right.
Now, if the other home is going crazy and buying loads of expensive gifts for your kids, fine, let them. Be happy for your kids when they get something really cool from that other home. Make it okay for them.
That's right.
Let go of the competition. And don't let that other home dictate your budget.
That's right.
Just because they're spending lots of money and going all out doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah. And it's not only the budget that they're dictating, are they?
It's all about the long game.
Yeah.
Right? We're wanting to teach our kids about money management. We're wanting to teach our kids good character through this whole experience of Christmas and budgeting.
Money,
how we manage money. So overextending on gifts, it's a quick fix. But
and it feels good in the moment.
It does. But what's more important is teaching our kids about delayed gratification and wants versus needs.
Yeah, those are long-term wins.
Those are long-term wins. We don't want to just give them everything they want and then they expect to always get everything they want.
Yeah. And as soon as we fall victim to that competition trap with the other home, and that other home, what they're doing starts dictating our budget, now they're not, like I said, they're not just dictating the budget. Now they're dictating how we teach our kids about money management. And I don't want that. I want to be able to set a good example and teach my kids based on what I want to teach them, not what someone else is teaching them.
Stick to the priorities that are important in your home. Don't worry about what the other home is doing, and don't compete. I know that's really hard. But your kids are not going to love them more if they spend more money. That's not true. How love works.
Yes. And that's research backed.
Don't just get that fear off your mind right now. And what kind of precedents do you want to set for future years? We live in this culture of competition and one-upping everyone and one-upping everything. How can we do better than last year? How can we improve as far as how many more gifts can we buy? Instead, consider letting that go. That's what we want to challenge you to do. And consider getting everyone centered around giving rather than getting. This mindset or this character trait of generosity, of reaching out to others and helping others. And those were some things that we implemented in our Advent adventure as well.
Yeah, we kind of baked that in, didn't we?
And the kids loved it. One day we spent a whole afternoon making cookies from scratch and decorating them. We had so much fun. And then we handed out plates of cookies to all the neighbors in the neighborhood. And we took some of those cookies as well and went shopping for care package items for homeless people. So we diverted some of our holiday budget into buying warm socks and water bottles and all kinds of fun things for homeless people. Put some cookies in there, and then we drove around and searched for people living on the streets.
Like 4 or 6 packages or something?
Yeah, I think we had 6,
Yep.
And we just had a blast, and it was so heartwarming to see their faces light up and their thank yous. And it was impactful for our kids and gets them out of themselves, right? It seems like kids are just so focused on me, what can I get? And that whole entitlement attitude of I deserve these things. Serving others really helps kids to see beyond themselves and not be so self-centered.
Yeah. And not to kind of make this a competition, but that experiencing that is probably likely going to stick with kids a lot longer than that gift they received in the other home.
Yeah.
So there's lots of
big,
ways
expensive gift
to get ourselves out of that competition mindset. And this can just reinforce, maybe it's not really all about the money or the gifts.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And when you fall for that, you're actually letting them control your home. And that's just not a good place to be.
That's right. Yeah, because they're not just dictating the budget. They're dictating what you're teaching your kids.
The values you're teaching in your home.
That's right.
Around money.
So those are our 4 mindsets. And I believe...
easy.
No, they're not easy. However, if we can wrap our mind around them and we can really leverage them when we sit down to work together on a budget that's focused on our entire family, they can really help. And so just a quick review, that is, fair isn't always equal. We're focused on equity. How are the kids receiving the messages we want them to receive? We're not fearing disappointment, and we're certainly not assuming that the kids are going to be disappointed. We're going to clarify some things, and we're going to make sure that they have their expectations in line. That's all we have to do. We're going to think about how we can create more experiences and not get high-centered on just gifts, and be creative and be fun and be giving, like we just talked about. How can we give outside of our family? And then finally, we're not going to allow it to become a competition with that other home. Yeah. If we can get those 4 things in mind while we're working out the budget, it might be really incredible how we get to the other side of New Year's without having any regret about what we did spend, and even without having any more debt on the credit card.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I know. We're excited to head into the holiday season ourselves, and we hope that this really helps you out as you head that direction. So that makes episode, what is this, like number 12, I think
so.
That makes episode number 12 a wrap. Don't forget to leave us a rating or a review.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.